Saat ini, Anda sedang mendengarkan radio era baru. Green Radio Line, Beyond the Limit.
Hey, and now you're listening Green Radio Line with me, Livia Collins, in BUMI Kita program. So today we have the special guest, we have the exclusive interview with Wini Rizkiningayu with the topic renewable energy for the future. So she's speaking as a renewable energy enthusiast. So she's one of the mentor of YWES, or we call it as a Young Woman for Sustainability, and a fellow in the Think Policy and also Indonesian's future leader cohort, Women in Geothermal. So thank you so much for your time. And it's such a big honor that I could talk to the persons, like to the women just like you. And then I'm sure that me and also the listener today can learn a lot of things from you.
It's my pleasure, really, to be here and to be interviewed by Green Radio Pekanbaru and to share with all of you guys on a topic that's very close to my heart, renewable energy.
Okay, great. So maybe the first I really want to ask, like, how are you there?
I'm doing good, surviving. I think, like many of us, I think this pandemic affects all of us. I've been working from home since March, and not only working from home, I've been doing a lot of my activities from home actually lately.
Great. So, I want to tell that our interview today will be aired in Green Radio Line in Bumi Kita program. So, through our website in www.greenradioline.id and also our YouTube channel in the Green Radio Line YouTube channel in this Saturday. So, thank you so much. And then maybe for the first time, I really want to get your interviews. Your introductions. So the listener will know more about you.
Okay, so my name is Wini Rizkiningayu. You can call me Wini because there's a win in Wini and I love winning. No kidding. So I work for a foreign government institution. I help them developing their business and investment for renewable energy and tech, especially in Indonesia. Aside from that, like Livia has already said, I have several extracurriculars. I'm a fellow in Think Policy. That's a think tank for youth and policy issues. I'm also a mentor in Young Women for Sustainability. And I'm part of Indonesia cohort in International Leader for Women in Geothermal. Aside from that, I do a lot of facilitation. I do a lot of storytelling and also some part of public speaking. So that's about me, Livia.
Oh, great. Maybe we come to the topic today. Like what? No. I think I really want to ask about your activity right now lately. And also, especially we are in the middle of the pandemic. Is that affect your daily life?
Well, my daily life now consists of a routine of, getting up, watering my plant. Now I have plants in my house because of the one pandemic. And after that, doing my activity from home, I do working from home. I do my mentoring from home. I do my facilitation from home. But from time to time, I try to do activities outside the home. Like, for example, in the morning where no one is up, I try to run. I try to do my running around my apartment complex. I also do wall climbing. I've been loving wall climbing a lot this past few months, but I go to a place with a very strict safety and health protocol, and they sanitize everything. But that's one of my way to channel my energy aside from working.
Great. Maybe I will try that one day maybe. So come to the topic today. So what is the renewable energy itself? I'm really curious about that.
So when we're talking about renewable energy, let's talk first about the source of energy that human has used since industrial revolution in the 1800s-ish. So when we're talking about source of energy during the industrial revolution, people rely on coal. People started to rely on oil and gas in powering the development. Before that, we don't have other sources of energy. And then now our development and now our progress is actually being built by energy from fossil fuel.
Yep.
And those fossil fuel, as we know, as we exploit them in the nature, the resource itself is depleted, and it takes hundreds of years for them to renew themselves so that we can reutilize them. So the definition that I use and many other people use for renewable energy is the source of energy that can be replenished as part of the nature, and it's not taking hundreds of years to replenish because it's always there. It's the part of nature, and the source is readily available for us to tap. For example, the sun, which is always shining, the wind that is blowing, and geothermal that provide heats from the earth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's the definition of renewable energy.
So yeah, when we're talking about the renewable energy, just like what you said, the wind and also the suns. But if we're looking at the weather, like sometimes there's no wind and also there is no suns exactly. And then what happened to the renewable energy itself when there is no energy?
So the sources is always there. And the beauty of renewable energy is that depends on where you are, you would have different potential of energy.
Yep.
For example, for us living in the tropics, we would have more exposure of the sun compared to those four season countries.
Mm-hmm.
For those living in hills or in the area with a lot of wind potential where the wind is always blowing, they have a very huge wind potential. For countries that lies in the Pacific Ring of Fire with volcanoes and a lot of volcanoes, we have a lot of potential of geothermal or the heat from the earth. Or if you're living in archipelagical island, you would have a lot of potential of tidal. Even even if even if your area didn't have all those or have only small part of those, you can use biofuel, for example, or you can use energy coming from the waste, for example. So the sources of renewable energy is always there. They're readily tapped, and clean energy has far more recommended that than just the source being tapped, but the operation itself and the byproduct itself is actually green and healthy for the earth.
Mm-hmm, great, amazing. So yeah, you already said about the several types of the renewable energy. So can you make a specific one so we know like how many renewable energy or the options that we have right now?
Well, there's a lot of option, I think. One of the most popular one is definitely solar energy,
Mm-hmm.
the energy from the sun. There's also wind energy, the energy from the wind. There's also tidal power. That's the energy that's produced from the tidal of the sea. There's also wave power. So wave power is the kinetic and potential energy associated with the ocean waves. There's also geothermal, the energy that we can tap from the heat of the earth. There's hydropower. So hydropower comes from the flow of water that moves the turbine. And there's also biomass that is defined as any organic matter that is available on a renewable basis. It can include organic waste from industrial sources, feedstocks from plants or animals that later on can be changed into energy. So those are the type of renewable energy. Oh, and there's also nuclear energy that's available. So some people count nuclear as part of renewable energy.
Uh-huh.
And yes, they comes from the earth and they can actually generate a lot of energy with just small amount of sources. But of course, the operation is far more risky compared to the others.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know how to handle them, they're a great potential of renewable energy.
Okay, great. So, you already said about many kind of the renewable energy. So, what is the kind of renewable energy that already applied in the world today? Like, what? Mm-hmm.
I think almost everything that I just mentioned has been applied in the world. Solar energy has been increasingly popular with solar rooftop everywhere. Countries like Indonesia, for example, has been tapping into hydropower for years. Country like New Zealand has been using 98% of their electricity source, if I'm not mistaken, from renewable energy. So they're tapping into combination of geothermal, hydro, and other renewable energy sources. And even when we're talking about countries like Kenya in Africa, they're now starting to exploit geothermal power. And a lot of country has also harnessed wind energy as well as tidal and wave like the Netherlands. So almost all type of renewable energy right now, I think, has been utilized into certain extent by the countries around the world.
Oh, great. So the next questions like why it is important to think about the renewable energies. Why?
Why is it important to think about renewable energy? Because renewable energy is one of our solution to fight the climate crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So as you know that energy is important to move the economy and to power the development. But when the sources itself that you use to power the economy and development come from fossil, it generates a lot of carbon emission, and also the operation generates a lot of carbon emission. So if we're talking about the most pressing issues that our Earth facing right now, it's the climate crisis, and energy really contributes a lot into fighting the climate crisis. In any discussion about climate crisis, renewable energy usually tops the list of changes the world can implement to stave off the worst effects of rising temperature. And this is because renewable energy such as solar and wind and geothermal and tidal, they don't emit carbon dioxide. If they do, it's very the least minimum amount of it, and other greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming.
Mm-hmm. Great, great, great. So I just amazed by you, like maybe because you are a speaker and you speak a lot in many forums. You speak like wow. I just really want to compliment that. How the renewable energy itself intertwines between the green and also the economic recovery, like you already mentioned about that.
Yeah. So I would like to think that environment and economy is not a choice that you have to make. It's never a trade-off between environment and economy. To be able to have a, a prosperous economic development, you need to have environment. You need to have supporting system. You need to have an ecosystem that enables that to happen, and you need the environment to
Mhm.
be able to do that. There's no use of such a prosperous economic development, but we are facing global warming,
Yep.
right? So in the light of economic development, we're trying to move to a more sustainable development that really takes into account the environment. So we're still trying to be prosperous economic wise without sacrificing the environment, but rather making the environment a requirement for that. And in the light of pandemic, everybody is trying to recover their economy, right? And I think that a lot of people are talking about green recovery because
Yeah.
this all of these crises, not only the pandemic, but all of this crisis, the global warming and everything happens because we adhere to the old ways. So our old ways from the industrial revolution until now is to use fossil fuel or fossil based energy to power our development. And in the light of pandemic and recovery, if we want to recover our economy, why don't we use a greener, more sustainable energy source so that we can create a better system? So we're not adhering to the old system. So we are recovering by actually creating a better ecosystem, tapping into a better, cleaner, greener source of energy. And that would enable a better recovery in the future. Because if we're talking about recovery, we're talking about jobs creation, we're talking about cost, we're talking about how we can provide a better enabling system for our economic to prosper. And I think an economic powered by renewable energy is the answer.
Yeah. So now I just amazed by the way you talk. Like maybe because you already speak in a many forums and you're such a speaker, and yeah, you say it in the right. Okay, I got a point. Amazing. I just really want to compliment that.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe the next one, you already state that you are especially concerned about the geothermal energy itself. The fact that the geothermal energy itself less mainstream than the other resources like the renewable energy, just like the wind and also the sun. So that why is that happened? Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a few reasons, right? First of all, I think sun, wind, they're more popular because they're readily available. Like wherever you are on this earth, although with different potential, you can tap into sun, for example. But geothermal is pretty much geographically bound. So if we're talking about geothermal, we're talking about the heat that the earth produce.
Yep.
If you take a look into your natural science lesson book or your natural science lesson, you would know that the earth itself, the more you get into the core of the earth, the more heat it is, the hotter it is. And some of this heat is channeled through the surface um, through volcanic mountains, for example. So when you're living in a place with a lot of volcanic mountain, or what we call it ring of fire throughout the world, the place with a lot of volcanoes, you have a lot of potential for geothermal power. But not every place is like that. It's very geographically bound. I think that's the first reason why it's not as popular, because you just cannot tap it everywhere. You need to be in the place with the potential. And second of all, I think because of the operation of tapping geothermal itself, like solar, wind, tidal, everything is above the ground, right? But
Yep.
when it comes to geothermal, you need to do some drilling, you need to do some exploration to
Uh-huh.
tap into the energy. And sometimes that this is considered as, oh, so this is the same as oil and gas because you need to drill.
Mm.
No, it's not the same. Why? Because first of all, geothermal, when you drill, you actually try to tap into the steam. The steam that when you boiled water, you get the steam out.
Uh-huh.
Just like that, the earth has the steam. So
Oh.
you drill so that you can get the steam. The steam would later move the turbine that would generate electricity. So the byproduct of geothermal energy first is electricity. So you will get a clean electricity because you just need to tap into the steam. The steam will move the turbine.
Mm-hmm.
There's no carbon and very minimal carbon emission on that. Second of all, the product of geothermal is actually heat. So the heat from the earth that people can use for example, hot spring, or even better, if you have local industries like coffee and etc. that need drying, you can use the heat from geothermal to dry the coffee bean, for example. And from geothermal itself, the byproduct is also steam. So the water that is so heated that it dispersed into steam. So the byproduct of geothermal is very much different with the fossil fuel, right? But sometimes because the operation is below ground, it becomes less mainstream. Third of all, I think geothermal power plant needs to be close to the source.
Mm-hmm.
Like solar, you can just put solar rooftop wherever you are. But when it comes to geothermal, you need to be close to the power plant need to be close to the source of geothermal.
Mm-hmm.
The technology of geothermal is also not as fastly developed and scalable as other renewable energy sources that is considered, it's now cheaper, it's now more scalable. But geothermal needs uh, quite a very niche technology to actually being developed, and it's not as fast as other. And the last but not least is the investment cost. Geothermal require a bigger investment cost compared to like solar, for example, or wind.
Yep.
But this investment cost will pay off in the future. So I guess that's the point why geothermal is less mainstream, so to say, and less people knows about it.
Oh, great. So yeah, if we are looking at a lot of the energies that the options that we have, like what is the sources like the renewable energy that the best for the world right now, for your point of view?
Well, here's the thing, and here's the beauty about renewable energy.
Uh-huh.
There's no best source. It would depend on where you are, it would depend on where you live, it would depend on your access to technology as well. When we're talking about the best source is the one that's most readily available to you, the one with the technology for you to tap on, and the one that actually I would call it low hanging fruit. So it's easy to produce energy from that source. So for example, if you live in the tropical, or if you live in the equator, solar energy might be the best for you. If you live in archipelagical island, wave or tidal might be the best for you. If you live near a huge lake, then hydro might be the best for you. Or like us, Indonesia, if you live in the ring of fire, then geothermal might be one of the best.
So can the renewable energy itself like replace the fossil fuels that you already mentioned? Like today, all of the worlds are using fossil fuels for the energies, because the dirty energies, like we say that, already impact on the environment and also the earth. The not only the earth but also the health of the people. So is that possible to change from the dirty one to the sustainable one?
Before we move into that, there's three things that we need to consider when we talk about energy. First one, we need to consider energy security. Energy security means that, are we dependent on single source of energy, or do we have alternatives?
Yep.
If something happened, if something bad happened, or a force major happened, do we have alternative to replace the energy that we lost, or to replace the sources that is lost? That's the first thing to consider. The second thing is the energy equity or energy accessibility, meaning that people should have access to energy. And it's important for people to have access, because energy powered everyday life, energy powered development. And the third thing to consider is environmental sustainability. So whether the energy is good for the earth and for humanity in the long run. And in regards to those three factors, I think that if we're talking about replacing fossil fuel with renewable energy, I think that the term is not replacing, the term would be transitioning, because we still need to consider energy security, energy accessibility, and environmental sustainability. Of course, the ideal condition would be uh, transitioning the fossil fuel into renewable energy. But the real question is that, how can we have other alternatives from fossil fuel,
Mhm.
while we're still ensuring that there's access, that there's a just and inclusive access for all people, including people living in the furthest island,
Mhm.
to energy, to power their daily life, and how those sources are environmentally sustainable. So I guess sustainable energy actually answer this question, but of course we cannot deny that there's a legacy system. So what we need to aim together is to transition the energy. So energy transition is the key.
Great, amazing. So, what is the benefit itself from the renewable energy to the environment specifically? If we are using the renewable energy, what is the impact on the environment, or what happened? Mhm.
So I think the first impact, of course, is the how it actually it can stave off the worst effects of rising temperatures.
Mhm.
They don't contribute to as much as carbon dioxide as in fossil fuel, right? So I would talk about two things. The first that I would talk is the operation on getting the energy. The operation on getting the energy in solar, in wind, in geothermal, they emit no carbon dioxide, or a very minimum level of carbon dioxide, compared to energy generation or electricity generation from fossil fuel. For example, when you're actually burning diesel to move the turbine, compared to steam
Mhm.
that is from water in moving the turbine. Of course, the second one is considered a more environmentally friendly.
Mhm.
And clean energy also actually in the operation, they're of course they have their own trade-off and associated debates, but I think on the operations itself, they tend to be more environmentally friendly. They tend to be greener for the earth, and they tend to be more they tend to be more forward looking. So we're not associating the byproducts with externalities cost, which bring me to my second point, the byproduct or the result of the renewable energy itself, from the sun, from the wind. you will get the energy. From geothermal, not only the energy, you will get the heat as well. The byproduct itself is more environmentally friendly. It emits least carbon dioxide rather than the fossil fuel, obviously. So there's a lot of externalities cost that is attached to fossil fuels, like, for example, air quality, the destruction of the environment, and many other that I think is compared to the renewable energy is a better alternatives for this.
Great. So, come to the next questions that we have. Like, renewable energy needs a lot of money, just like what you already said lately. Like, it needs a lot of investment to build the energy itself. So, but how does the renewable energy itself to can save the money?
Okay. So I will speak from my point of view as a business development professional. I will talk about three things. I would talk about the cost of doing nothing. The second of all, I will talk about the return of investment. And the third of all, I'll talk about opportunity lost. This might sound very technical, but I'll try to explain it in a way that everyone can understand.
Mhm.
First of all, I'll explain about the cost of doing nothing. Of
Yep.
course, doing nothing or stay in the status quo seems nice. You know, we still get our source of energy regardless whether it's sustainable or not. But there's actually a cost of doing nothing. If we don't start to invest in renewable energy, regardless the cost, and I know that some renewable energy can have, they need big investment, big initial investment at first.
Yep.
But in the long run, if we don't invest, we would be burdened by a lot of externalities cost if we just stay in status quo. We will be piling up externalities costs, like, for example, health costs associated to air quality. We would be piling up cost of environmental destruction. We would be even piling up the cost of climate crisis. And this is, I cannot stress this enough. This is a crisis that we need to adhere. The
Yep.
crisis will affect every part of our business as usual: food, water supply, disaster management, everything. So the externalities cost of not doing anything is actually greater than if we decide to invest right now.
Mhm.
Regardless, yes, there will be cost of investment that seems to be quite big initially, but in the long run, if we invest now, it will cost less than actually not doing anything and invest later. So that's what we call the cost of not doing anything. So not doing anything actually has its own cost, right?
Yep.
That's the first.
Hmm.
Second cost. Second thing to talk about is return of investment. Of course, when people want to make a renewable energy system, or they want to invest in geothermal, for example, they would think about, oh, there's a huge cost of investment. Yes, but it also gives you a good return of investment in the long run based on cost per energy product. The cost of energy product is right now, with the investment, seems to be a bit of higher at first,
Yep.
but up to a certain point the cost will be so much significantly lower, and it would stabilize compared to the price of electricity. So the return of investment is actually good. Investing in renewable energy might cost you, or might impact you cost wise, quite some amount of money at the first investment or initial investment, but the return of investment is awesome. For example, I talk about geothermal, but let me talk about solar rooftop as well. If you decided to buy a solar rooftop for your house, of course you would spend money for
Yep.
investment. You would invest at the product, and you want to get a good one. But in the long run, the investment itself will pay off by, you would harness the energy from solar rooftop for your electricity, and your electricity bill will be significantly lower. So it would help you saving the cost. So by saving the cost, you actually can calculate the amount of money, or the amount of cost that you save. And if you put that into a calculation, you would get your return of investment. You will save much more than the cost of the solar rooftop. That's one of the analogies. So the analogy from the big project like geothermal and the small decision like solar rooftop. That's the second one on return of investment. The third one is I'd like to talk about opportunity loss. Opportunity loss is the cost of something that you lost if you're not starting it right now. For example, the whole world is now moving towards renewable energy.
Yep.
If we don't start now, and if we start later, it would be much more expensive because then we would just be a consumer of technology, a consumer of innovation, and that's the opportunity lost. If we don't start now, we lost the opportunity of being a leader. We lost the opportunity of accumulating knowledge. And opportunity loss is a cost that people don't often calculate,
Yep.
but I think it's a loss that's quite severe.
Mhm.
So that's the third one. So we talk about the cost of not doing anything, we talk about return of investment, and we talk about opportunity loss. Those are the costs that is associated to renewable energy development.
Great, amazing. So, next questions that we have: will the renewable energy itself make the people? It's create a job, but how about the people who work in the dirty energy right now, like the non-sustainable energy right now? Is it will make a people lost their job, and especially about the non-renewable energy workers.
Here's the thing, Lithia. With every changes in economy, there will be also changes in structure and job available in the market.
Yep.
Like prior to industrial revolution, people are living their life in such a manner that is completely changed when the industrial revolution come. Of course, some job become obsolete, but there's also some new job, and I believe that this is the case with adopting renewable energy. There will be some job that cease to exist, but there will also be opportunity for much more job. And I believe on two things when it comes to job. First of all, human is very adaptive. With changes, human adapt. And the adaptation might not be easy, but those who can adapt, those who can survive will thrive. That's the first thing that I believe. Human is adaptive. And when industrial revolution came, human has proven to be very adaptive and adapt to new job. And even now, with our capacity of technology, with our capacity of upskilling, we would be much more adaptive than we were during the industrial revolution. So I believe that human is very adaptive. Second of all, I believe that there's a lot of transferable skill from the fossil industry to the non-fossil industry or renewable energy. For example, if you're in oil and gas and you're doing drilling,
Yep.
same thing are being done in geothermal.
Awesome.
So it's the one of the example of transferable skills, right? So I believe that human is adaptive and there's transferable skill. So as long as we are prepared for this and we prepare ourselves well, the impact on certain career or job will not be as detrimental as we thought it would be. So that it begs the question of how far we can transition, because the faster we decide to transition, the more edge that we will have, especially as a nation, because we will be accumulating experience, we would be starting our own innovation, and that is needed so that we can create more jobs, and not only more jobs but more jobs that is impactful for the earth and the people.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So you already mentioned about those kind of things, but how about the futures of the renewable energies that you seeing right now? Is that a hope? Is that any?
I'm pretty much I'd like to call myself an optimistic, realistic person. So I think that renewable energy definitely has taken up some space in the energy world nowadays. And we need to be able to be optimistic and still fight for a better alternative for climate crisis. So I think energy transition is possible in a lot of places in the world. So not only the developed country like the UK or the country in EU, but also countries like even like Kenya, us, the Philippines, we've been trying to transition. So let's be optimistic here, but also let's be pragmatic and see the realities. But definitely, if you see the trend, everybody is moving, although not at the same pace. But we're moving into the same trend of transitioning into a better and more renewable source of energy.
Yes, great. The last questions that I have with the English one before we are move to our mother language. So, how can the people like we, or for example, like us, like me and you, um, make the renewable energy or use the renewable energy in our daily life?
Well, there's a few approach to that. If you live in a country that have multiple provider of electricity, and you can choose where to buy your electricity from, and there's a comparison that one is using fossil fuel, one is using the renewable energy. Of course, I think the way is to actually support the electricity provider that gets their source from the renewable energy sources. That will be the first. Uh, or you can, if you have the capacity and resources, you can start to installing, for example, solar rooftop to complement your current electricity source. But if not, I think even by listening to this radio program, even by educating yourself on the importance and the awareness of what is renewable energy, why it matters, I think it's a good start for us to create an ecosystem where people realize the importance of renewable energy. So there's a lot of things we can do, from personal action, decision making, into last but not least, I think we need to learn to use our energy wisely. If you don't have any choices where to get your electricity from, and you know that most likely it comes from the fossil fuel, you can be more mindful in actually utilizing your electricity and your energy at home. You won't be leaving your lights on in the morning, for example, or you won't be leaving your air conditioner on when you go out of the house. So a more mindful consumption of energy is also one of the important things that we can do to help this earth bear less burden of fossil energy.
Exactly, such amazing speech. So, sekarang nih udah saatnya kita berbicara dengan bahasa nasional kita dan juga isu nasional secara spesifik ya Kak ya, transition nih.
Oke.
Heeh. Dan lebih hal ini juga lebih didukung dengan kesempatan besar yang kita punya sekarang berbicara dengan Kak Wini nih, narasumber yang compatible banget di isu tentang energi yang terbarukan. Nah, isu yang pertama yang ingin saya tanyakan adalah bagaimana nih Kak kondisi dalam negeri sendiri tentang pengalihan dari energi yang sudah ada seperti fossil fuels dan juga ke energi terbarukan seperti halnya yang ramah lingkungan begitu.
Kalau di Indonesia sendiri, Livia, saya rasa ada beberapa faktor. Yang pertama dari faktor konsumen energi itu sendiri atau pengguna. Kita sekarang sudah semakin aware lagi, semakin banyak orang yang mulai mengerti apa sih renewable energy itu, kenapa sih renewable energy itu penting, kenapa sih saya harus mikirin dari mana listrik saya berasal, apa hubungannya listrik saya dengan kualitas udara misalnya. Jadi dari segi pengguna energi itu sendiri sudah mulai terbentuk awareness-nya. Dari sisi industri menurut saya, karena saya memang orang industri dan ada di dalam sektor, sudah semakin banyak interest, sudah semakin banyak kemauan untuk baik itu berinvestasi maupun beroperasi di bidang energi terbarukan ini, apalagi dengan beberapa perkembangan teknologi yang jauh lebih scalable, jauh lebih accessible, dan jauh lebih murah sekarang. Nah, salah satu poin pentingnya juga adalah bagaimana pemerintah juga sudah mulai punya program untuk energi baru dan terbarukan. Buktinya kita punya Direktorat Jenderal EBTKE di Menteri Energi, dan dalam Direktorat Jenderal itu pun ada beberapa inisiatif yang sangat baik untuk mendukung shift atau transisi ke renewable energy, baik itu dari sisi pengguna maupun dari sisi industri. Dan juga beberapa BUMN itu juga sudah mulai memikirkan untuk bertransisi ke energi yang jauh lebih ramah lingkungan. Jadi saya merasa memang kita masih di dalam stage yang sangat early ya, kita masih di awal-awal, tapi kemauan dan drive untuk mentransisikan energi kita sudah ada.
Dan kalau kita melihat energi yang ada di Indonesia sekarang kayak batu bara gitu kan Kak, itu kan happening banget dan banyak banget perusahaan batu bara. Dan kalau misalnya kita bakal shifting nih to the renewable energy, itu bakal ada pergolakan nasional sendiri nggak sih? Karena kan kayaknya dikuasai banget nih sama batu bara, karena kan juga murah gitu. Itu yang membuat energi yang kita beli di PLN sekarang itu lebih murah. Itu gimana tuh menurut Kakak?
Menurutku yang pertama kita harus melihat renewable energy atau energi terbarukan ini in different light. Jadi bukan cuma
Ya.
sumber listrik, tapi juga sumber listrik yang tidak berkontribusi terhadap emisi karbon. Sumber listrik yang tidak berkontribusi terhadap naiknya suhu bumi overall. Jadi yang pertama kita harus melihat sumber energi listrik terbarukan ini atau energi terbarukan ini dengan point of view atau dengan sudut pandang yang berbeda. Itu yang pertama. Yang kedua kita tahu bahwa saat ini kita masih punya beberapa produk subsidi untuk energi yang non terbarukan. Nah, bukan hanya ini bisa menghalangi atau bukan menghambat, tapi memang memperlambat progres untuk energi baru dan terbarukan. Biaya produksi dan biaya penjualannya bisa jadi misalnya tidak kompetitif, energi fosil lebih murah dibandingkan energi baru dan terbarukan, sehingga secara ekonomi jadinya dari pelaku industri masih jauh lebih masuk akal untuk berinvestasi di energi fosil. Jadi mungkin kita harus mulai membuat yang namanya level playing field. Jadi level playing field ini adalah di mana energi fosil dan energi terbarukan berkompetisi di ranah yang sama. Jadi tidak ada mungkin energi baru dan terbarukan kita tidak meminta subsidi baru gitu, tapi kita ingin bahwa kedua energi ini apabila dihitung cost-nya, kita menghitungnya dengan cara yang sama. Tidak ada subsidi maupun insentif untuk fosil energi, dan energi baru terbarukan juga akan bermain di level playing field yang sama. Karena saat ini yang dirasakan oleh industri adalah kita tidak bermain di level playing field yang sama dengan energi fosil di Indonesia. Itu yang kedua. Lalu pentingnya menghitung externalities cost. Kita harus tahu bahwa 1 kilowatt hour yang dihasilkan itu cost-nya bukan hanya dari cost berapa yang kita habiskan untuk tap ke sumber energi dan mengubahnya menjadi listrik. Namun ada cost atau biaya-biaya yang lain seperti biaya kesehatan. Apakah dalam memproduksi energi tersebut kita melepaskan karbon dioksida ke udara? Apakah kita melepaskan elemen-elemen berbahaya untuk pernafasan? Itu kan biaya yang harus dihitung juga kan? Karena pada nantinya biaya-biaya tersebut akan berkontribusi ke misalnya biaya kesehatan yang harus dikeluarkan negara ketika kualitas udara memburuk. Itu kan juga biaya yang biasanya tidak dihitung. Kita menyebutnya, dari tadi saya berbicara tentang externalities cost. Externalities cost ini yang harus mulai kita hitung. Karena sama aja kalau kita misalnya jual listrik misalnya dengan murah, tapi kualitas udara menurun dan kita akan ada spending ekstra di biaya kesehatan, nggak masuk akal gitu. Jadi memang yang pertama kita harus melihat sum up yang tadi. Yang pertama kita harus melihat energi baru dan terbarukan in different light dengan perspektif berbeda, bukan cuma sebagai sumber energi. Yang kedua, tentang level playing field, kita harus berkompetisi di level yang sama. Dan yang ketiga, kita harus mulai menghitung externalities cost atau biaya-biaya tambahan yang tidak terpikirkan ketika kita menghitung biaya energi yang dikonversi menjadi listrik. Begitu, Livia.
Dan kalau problemnya juga nih, yang Livia baca-baca searching bahwa kan kalau Indonesia nih yang provide energinya itu hanya dari PLN begitu kalau kita sebut.
Ya, betul.
Kalau di beberapa negara itu providernya itu ada banyak, ada dari nasional dan juga swasta begitu Kak. Apakah itu juga menjadi problem nih untuk masa depan energi terbarukan sendiri nih? Karena adanya monopoli ya bisa dibilang ya, hanya bertumpu di satu saja gitu. Jadi option berbeda lagi, ada halangan di situ. Apakah benar menurut Kakak gimana?
Kalau menurut saya begini, jadi kita punya yang namanya market forces kan. Market forces itu bisa dalam bentuk sebagai konsumen kita mendrive atau kita menggerakkan kita menggerakkan provider service maupun produk, kita butuhnya apa. Kayak misalnya, kalau lagi tren kopi susu, mulai banyak bermunculan vendor kopi susu misalnya. Nah, ketika konsumennya mulai aware sama energi baru dan terbarukan, ini akan menjadi sebuah market force yang bisa mendorong provider listrik, apapun itu providernya, untuk merubah cara mereka beroperasi. Di beberapa negara dengan beberapa provider listrik, bukan hanya nasional tapi swasta, market force ini memang jauh lebih kuat karena pasti providernya akan mengikuti market. Ketika marketnya bilang, oh kami maunya sumber listriknya bersih, pasti mereka akan mengikuti. Namun ini tidak menutup kemungkinan PLN sebagai provider listrik di Indonesia untuk berpindah ke energi yang lebih bersih ketika dari segi konsumennya memang sudah ada push seperti itu. Dan PLN kan juga bertanggung jawab bukan hanya mendeliver listrik, tapi juga sebagai suatu badan usaha milik negara, dia pastinya akan membantu Indonesia untuk mencapai goal kita dalam mengurangi emisi karbon. Jadi mungkin push-nya bukan hanya dari market, tapi juga dari sisi kelembagaan dan dari sisi negara itu sendiri. Seperti itu, Livia.
Oh, keren. Semoga masa depannya tentang energi terbarukan ini cerah ya Kak ya.
Ya, hopefully.
Iya, seperti yang udah kita ketahui nih Kak, Indonesia negara kedua terbesar penghasil energi panas bumi di dunia, penghasil geothermal dunia setelah Amerika Serikat. Dan dilansir dari Indonesia Investment, sekitar 40% dari cadangan energi panas bumi atau geothermal terletak di bawah tanah Indonesia. Namun hanya 4 sampai dengan 5% saja yang saat ini digunakan kapasitasnya. Melihat dari data di atas yang udah disebutkan tadi, apa nih Kak letak strategis Indonesia sendiri menjadi peluang besar bagi Indonesia untuk beralih secara keseluruhan ke energi terbarukan itu sendiri seperti geothermal.
Baik, jadi salah satu yang membedakan geothermal dengan energi baru dan terbarukan lainnya itu adalah bahwa geothermal itu bisa menyediakan sumber energi yang 24 jam sehari, 7 hari, seminggu. Jadi nggak putus.
Ya.
Ketika kita bicara tentang matahari ataupun listrik, ataupun angin, matahari pasti ada saat ketika mataharinya tidak bersinar, walaupun memang energinya bisa disimpan di dalam baterai. Begitu juga dengan angin, ada saat ketika anginnya tidak memutar turbin, walaupun memang energi ketika angin memutar turbin bisa disimpan di baterai untuk saat-saat ketika turbinnya tidak berputar. Tapi dengan geothermal kita mendapatkan sumber energi yang kontinu, jadi tidak terputus. Steam dari bumi itu akan selalu menggerakkan turbin. Jadi dia punya, kalau di orang-orang energi kita bilangnya base load electricity. Jadi sumber listrik yang selalu ada. Jadi geothermal dipasangkan dengan solar, dipasangkan dengan wind, dipasangkan dengan tidal, itu sangat ideal sekali karena biasanya sumber energi kita yang tidak terputus itu datang dari fossil source. Ya. Kita punya alternatif renewable energy untuk si sumber energi yang tidak terputus ini. Nah, nanti ketika butuh lebih atau ketika di pagi hari atau sampai siang hari bisa dikomplementkan dengan energi surya, bisa dikomplementkan dengan angin, bisa dikomplementkan dengan tidal. Dan masalahnya dengan energi ini kan seperti tadi saya sudah jelaskan, kita tidak bisa bergantung hanya pada satu source. Harus ada alternatif energi. Menurut saya dengan lokasi kita yang ada di Pacific Ring of Fire, dengan potensi geothermal kita yang sangat tinggi, kita sangat berpotensi untuk memasukkan geothermal ke dalam strategic planning atau perencanaan strategis energi Indonesia ke depannya. Beberapa negara yang potensinya sama seperti kita, misalnya Selandia Baru nih, sama-sama berada di Pacific Ring of Fire, sama-sama negara kepulauan. Selandia Baru sekarang mengandalkan source listrik mereka, mayoritasnya itu dari hydro dan geothermal, karena mereka punya banyak mereka punya banyak danau, banyak sungai, dan juga mereka di Pacific Ring of Fire. Menurut saya itu mirip sama Indonesia, kita punya banyak sungai besar, kita punya banyak danau, kita ada di Ring of Fire. Jadi mengapa kita tidak mengkomplementkan geothermal dengan sumber-sumber energi lainnya seperti hydro yang juga bisa provide base load, sehingga energi security kita lebih bagus. Benar. Dan semakin banyak orang bisa mengakses energi dan impact-nya ke lingkungan itu jauh lebih kecil dibanding hanya bergantung dari fossil fuel.
right.
Seperti itu.
Oke. Dan apa nih Kak halangan terbesar Indonesia untuk melakukan peralihan transition tadi dari energi yang sudah ada sekarang kayak fossil fuel, batu bara, dan juga peralihan energi yang ke misalnya geothermal ataupun hydro yang Kak bilang tadi. Dan bagaimana Indonesia menyiapkan solusi atas halangan yang sudah ada tadi?
Nah, menurut saya yang pertama paling penting itu adalah political will. Jadi harus ada kemauan dari komponen-komponen terkait untuk mendukung pengembangan energi baru dan terbarukan. Contohnya adalah misalnya vaksin misalnya. Vaksin itu kan memang kalau kita mau memvaksin semua orang saat ini, yaitu dibutuhkan biaya yang besar. Tapi kalau kita tidak memvaksin, cost-nya juga besar. Nah, begitu juga dengan renewable energy, dibutuhkan sebuah keputusan dari pemerintah dan komponen-komponen terkait untuk berkomitmen bahwa kita mau melakukan ini. Memang biayanya ada di depan, investmentnya besar, namun kalau kita tidak melakukan apa-apa, tadi kita sudah bicara tentang cost of not doing anything, cost-nya itu besar dan akan ada loss of opportunity. Belum lagi situasi bumi kita sebenarnya suhunya semakin hari semakin naik, dan bukan hanya pemerintah Indonesia yang berkepentingan, tapi seluruh dunia berkepentingan untuk mengubah cara kita beroperasi, cara kita melakukan kegiatan sehari-hari menjadi lebih sustainable. Dan mau tidak mau, kita sekarang semuanya sebenarnya powered by energy. Kita bisa melakukan Zoom meeting ini pun karena kita punya listrik kan. Backbone dari kegiatan kita adalah energi. Jadi kalau kita punya political will didukung dengan kemauan market atau orang-orang seperti kita yang aware tentang renewable energy, lalu industrinya sudah siap, itu semua akan mensupport usaha pemerintah untuk bertransisi ke energi baru dan terbarukan. Seperti itu, Livia.
Oke. Nah, kalau misalnya kita ngomong tentang renewable energy sendiri atau energi itu Kak, apakah spesifiknya hanya ke listrik saja nih? Tadi belum ngebahas itu sedikit. Apa ada energi lain yang dihasilkan? Gimana tuh Kak?
Pasti. Jadi kalau kita bicara energi, sebenarnya streamline-nya adalah yang pertama adalah byproduct atau produk energi sebagai listrik, yang kedua adalah produk energi sebagai fuel atau bahan bakar. Dan yang ketiga ada juga byproduct energi yang lainnya. Nah, kalau sebagai listrik kan tadi kita sudah diskusikan ya. Nah, produk energi by fuel untuk byproduct energi sebagai fuel ini, transportasi misalnya, saat ini masih sangat didominasi oleh fossil fuel. Tapi memang kita juga melihat trennya di dunia, orang-orang bergerak ke electric vehicle. Kalaupun belum bergerak ke electric vehicle, salah satu yang bisa kita lakukan adalah dengan memakai lebih banyak public transport. Karena emisinya sama, tapi orangnya lebih banyak yang bisa akomodasi oleh public transport. Jadi banyak sekali sebenarnya cara kita untuk hidup dengan lebih baik. Tapi memang fuel ini masih salah satu PR terbesar, apalagi di negara yang penduduknya banyak, kendaraannya banyak. Beralih ke electric vehicle atau beralih ke public transportation mengkomplement sumber energi listrik dari energi terbarukan. Karena misalnya, kalaupun kita semua sekarang tiba-tiba pakai mobil listrik, tapi listriknya masih dihasilkan oleh batu bara atau oil and gas atau fossil fuel yang lainnya, emisi karbonnya tetap cukup besar, walaupun kita meng-cut emisi karbon di bagian transportasi, seperti itu. Jadi memang semuanya harus complementary. Dan produk renewable energy ini bukan hanya listrik kan yang bisa dipakai misalnya nanti untuk electric vehicle, tapi juga kalau kita bicara geothermal, salah satu produknya adalah yang jelas banget adalah heat atau panas. Banyak sekali sebenarnya industri kecil, UMKM, industri lokal yang bisa memakai produk panas ini untuk sehari-harinya. Salah satu contoh kasus yang menurut saya sangat bagus adalah di Selandia Baru itu ada pabrik susu kambing yang memang sengaja dibuat di dekat tempat pembangkit geothermal. Kenapa? Karena ternyata di dekat tempat pembangkit geothermal itu banyak peternak kambing yang usahanya adalah susu kambing. Setiap hari mereka tuh banyak susu yang tidak terpakai atau terbuang. Dan sayang sekali kan waste kan yang tidak terjual atau tidak terpakai. Nah, susu yang tadinya terbuang sia-sia ini dengan adanya fasilitas untuk mengeringkan susunya menjadi susu bubuk
Wah.
melalui panas yang dihasilkan oleh panas bumi, mereka bisa punya added value untuk produknya. Yang tadinya waste sekarang bisa dijual. Nah, potensi-potensi usaha seperti ini, potensi-potensi inovasi seperti ini yang sebenarnya harus mulai kita lihat untuk melihat energi bukan hanya sebagai sumber listrik, bukan hanya sebagai bahan bakar transportasi, tapi juga penggunaan energi secara langsung, atau kalau di geothermal namanya direct use of geothermal. Dan energi ini bisa memacu banyak inovasi loh, jadi bukan cuma geothermal, misalnya ketika kita misalnya memberi ruang ekosistem untuk mengembangkan solar energi, banyak sekali menurut saya Indonesia orangnya pintar-pintar, pasti pengembangan teknologi yang mendukung solar atau mendukung energi matahari atau mendukung energi angin. Mungkin ada yang bikin apps untuk memonitor penggunaan energi, bikin smart grid dan lain-lain. Jadi memang membuka peluang di inovasi. Seperti itu, Livia.
Keren banget. Terakhir nih Kak, closing statement dari Kakak dan harapan atau pesan ke pendengar kita nih sekarang, Green Radio Line listeners, dan mungkin di awal Kak bisa introduce yourself, abis itu sampaikan pesannya begitu.
Oke, nama saya Wini Rizkiningayu dan saya adalah seseorang yang percaya bahwa energi sangat berperan dalam memerangi krisis iklim dan membuat dunia menjadi suatu tempat yang lebih baik untuk kita semua. Kita semua dapat berperan dalam mendukung transisi energi. Karena transisi energi tidak bisa terjadi hanya dengan 1-2 orang, 1-2 lembaga, 1-2 negara mencoba mentransisikan energinya. It takes a village to transition an energy. Dan semua orang punya perannya dalam mentransisikan energi. Apabila Anda berada di posisi pengambil keputusan, Anda bisa mengambil keputusan yang lebih condong terhadap penggunaan energi baru dan terbarukan. Apabila Anda bisa memutuskan untuk memakai energi baru dan terbarukan versus energi dari fosil, Anda bisa memutuskan untuk memakai energi baru dan terbarukan. Kalaupun Anda tidak bisa, salah satu hal yang sangat penting untuk dilakukan adalah untuk mengedukasi diri Anda sendiri tentang pentingnya energi baru dan terbarukan dan bagaimana energi baru dan terbarukan bisa berkontribusi untuk memerangi krisis iklim, untuk membuat bumi lebih baik, dan untuk memajukan ekonomi serta inovasi. Harapannya dengan kita semua melakukan peran kita, bahkan sekecil dari menghemat listrik karena kita belum punya kontrol terhadap listrik yang kita pakai source-nya dari mana, itu akan sangat membantu dalam menciptakan sebuah ekosistem yang memungkinkan transisi energi, sebuah ekosistem di mana kita sama-sama saling mendukung industri, mendukung komunitas, dan mendukung pemerintah untuk mentransisikan energi kita menjadi energi baru dan terbarukan. Terima kasih, Livia.
Terima kasih banyak Kak Wini untuk waktu, kesempatan, dan juga semua ilmu baru yang diberikan hari ini. Semoga sahabat Green bisa banyak belajar nih. Dan harapan kita bahwa energi terbarukan masa depannya bisa sangat cerah di nasional maupun di global ya Kak ya.
Yes.
Terima kasih banyak Kak Wini, stay healthy.
Terima kasih banyak Livia, stay healthy juga. Terima kasih banyak teman-teman.
Saat ini, Anda sedang mendengarkan Radio Era Baru, Green Radio Line, Beyond the Limit.